The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
If I didn't get involved, if we didn't bring the Guard in, and we would bring more in if we needed it, because we have to make sure there's going to be law and order.
A weekend of violence turns into a constitutional battle. What California officials are saying as more military assets could be headed to Los Angeles. Plus, trade talks in London, U.S. and Chinese officials back at the negotiating table. Where things stand and how far away they are from a new agreement. And later, updated policy for potential Harvard students. The new visa guidance the State Department is putting in place for hopeful foreign students. This is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, we are glad you are with us on a busy Monday. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and here is a live look over Olympic Boulevard, downtown Los Angeles, as we are now learning right now 700 Marines being sent to Los Angeles to assist the National Guard. This as anti-ICE protests in the city continue following a weekend of violence. Still, California officials demand President Donald Trump call back the National Guard, and they are suing the president for unlawfully nationalizing the California National Guard.
On Sunday, the protests had mostly dissipated and streets were mostly quiet and calm. Since Trump announced his plan to deploy troops, the situation on the ground has escalated quickly, with unrest growing overnight, causing highways to close and putting people in danger.
President Trump says his decision to call in the Guard was a great one and save the city from being completely obliterated. He elaborated this afternoon at the Invest in America roundtable.
You watched the same clips as I did. Cars burning all over the place, people rioting. And by the way, we stopped it. We were able to make it much better, but it still looked pretty bad. And in watching clips last night, people were saying this is really a big problem. And until we went in, if we didn't do the job, that place would be burning down just like the houses burned down.
This is violence erupted in the city over the weekend when protests on Friday turned to riots after local and federal law enforcement conducted immigration raids. 42 Mexican nationals were arrested by ICE. 37 men and 5 women were taken into custody. 4 of them have already been deported. 2 voluntarily left the country. The other 2 were removed on outstanding deportation orders. But Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass blamed the raids for the following violence.
In a city like Los Angeles, and we had talked about this for a long time, that has a very sophisticated long-term immigrant rights organizations and institutions, that if these random raids were going to happen, then there was going to be the danger of a backlash. And you add on to that the National Guard, and it felt like fuel for a fire that was unnecessary.
Stay with us as we continue to track developments on these protests throughout the evening. We'll have coverage for you both on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. The latest chapter in the ongoing battle between the White House and the legacy media just resulted in the suspension of ABC's veteran journalist Terry Moran after a middle-of-the-night social media post. Our Kayla Gaskins has reaction from Washington.
ABC's Terry Moran facing disciplinary action from the network for an X post published at 12:06 a.m. Sunday, where Moran slammed top Trump aide Stephen Miller, calling him a world-class hater, adding his hatreds are his spiritual nourishment.
And this is, again, coming from someone who is supposed to be an unbiased and professional journalist.
Moran's post also calls the president a world-class hater. In response, Vice President J.D. Vance urging the public to remember that every time you watch ABC's coverage of the Trump administration.
I think this speaks to the distrust that the American public have in the legacy media.
ABC swiftly suspending Moran, releasing a statement maintaining the news organization stands for objectivity and impartiality in its news coverage and does not condone subjective personal attacks on others.
Thank you for doing this.
In April, Moran sat down with President Trump in the Oval Office for an interview where there were a few tense moments.
I don't trust you. Look at you. You come in all shooting for bear. You're so happy to do the interview.
I am
And
happy.
then you start hitting me with fake questions. You're being dishonest.
No, I'm not.
In December, ABC News agreed to pay $15 million to the Trump Presidential Library to settle a defamation lawsuit for inaccurate comments made by anchor George Stephanopoulos against President Trump. CBS also faces a lawsuit by Trump for alleged deceptive editing of an interview with then-candidate Kamala Harris. CBS now negotiating with Trump about a possible multi-million-dollar settlement.
No reporter, no news organization can have open contempt for a political party or an elected official and maintain its credibility. It just comes across as unprofessional, and people lose confidence in the organization that is doing this.
And Didi, the conservative watchdog site Media Research Center did conduct a review in April, and they found the Trump administration receives 92% negative coverage from ABC, NBC, and CBS. Interesting context, Kayla. What do we know about Moran's suspension? Do we know how long it'll last, or when we could possibly see him return to the network? Well, according to ABC News, Moran is suspended pending further investigation, so he could be gone from the network for a while, and there's a chance he never returns on air at ABC. Some are even calling for him to apologize. Now, so far, Moran has refrained from making any more public comments. He did take the X post down Sunday morning. Didi. Live from Washington, D.C., Kayla Gaskins, thank you. The search continues off the San Diego coast for 6 missing people aboard a Cessna that crashed yesterday afternoon. Now, this debris field has been identified, but no survivors have been found yet. The plane, owned by Optimal Health Systems, was headed from San Diego to Phoenix. The identities of the passengers have not been made public. And this all comes as several people are recovering from injuries following a plane crash in Tennessee. Look right here. Authorities are confirming that small plane carrying skydivers crashed yesterday afternoon around 75 miles outside of Nashville. Shortly after takeoff, 6 of the 20 passengers were injured and brought to the hospital. No deaths were reported. A city administrator praised his team for their response.
Everyone knew their role. Everyone took their role seriously, and everyone did what we needed to do first, which was to take care of all of those who were affected by the event, as well as secure the scene.
2 people are dead and a suspect is in custody after a shooting on the Las Vegas Strip last night. Police say 41-year-old Manuel Ruiz turned himself in. The shooting appeared to stem from an ongoing conflict between social media personalities known as Sin City Manny and Finita Legend. One bystander said the police came quickly and he believes Las Vegas is still a safe place.
I think that Vegas is open for business, and if anything, we should feel safe because thankfully Metro is on top of their game.
More than 100 state troopers from multiple agencies were called in to help quell a prison riot in Trousdale County, Tennessee. Beginning late last night into this morning, prisoners took over stations inside the facility and even took multiple guards hostage. Some inmates did make into the yard of the prison where they started a fire with trash. But Sheriff Ray Russell says that by this morning, no one had escaped and order has been restored.
Well, we set up a perimeter outside the fence here, all the way around the prison, and waited for their response team to get here. They went on in and got the people out and started shooting tear gas over into the yard and kind of pushed them all back into their cell blocks and got them all locked back up.
The search for the Washington man suspected of killing his 3 young daughters is now in the hands of federal authorities. Today, local officials said their resources need rest after an extensive search through the forest, river, and buildings near Travis Decker's last known location. The bodies of Olivia, Evelyn, and Peyton Decker were found last Monday at a campground near the Pacific Crest Trail. Officials want people to review their home security cameras for signs of Decker considered armed and dangerous. And there is now a renewed focus on changing Washington's Amber Alert rules as people question why no one was ever issued in the case, why one wasn't issued, I should say. Washington State Patrol said the girl's disappearance initially didn't meet the requirements for an Amber Alert. Advocates hope to change that, as the National News Desk Ryan Sims reports.
From the beginning of this case, WSP says an Amber Alert was not issued for two reasons. First off, the fact that Travis Decker had never been violent with these girls before. And also number two, because there was no proof of abduction at the time they were reported as missing. Reasons that are not good enough for the girls' loved ones.
Yes, the Amber Alert system is broken. It needs to be fixed. We're working on that.
Como learned the victims' loved ones are now working to set up a task force that would examine the state's Amber Alert laws, all to see what aspects of the Amber Alert system are working and which things are unrealistic and need to be revamped. In Travis Decker's case, they say his history of mental illness and his military background should have been considered for an Amber Alert.
With the training and skill that he has, and unfortunately used, that should be an automatic Amber Alert.
Already, they say several central Washington attorneys have agreed to be part of this Amber Alert Commission, yet WSP insists that the current requirements for an Amber Alert just did not match this case.
We all wish we could go back in time, but we can't. We have a system, we have thresholds, they're set, they're thought through on 50 states. It's a successful program, but in this case, whatever alert we had did not work.
Washington State Patrol says it did issue an endangered missing persons alert for the girls. Their photos were sent to media outlets and alerts were displayed along highways. The only difference here from an Amber Alert is that people did not receive phone notifications. Each state or local community's Amber Alert system has its own criteria for issuing alerts. The Justice Department has an Amber Alert coordinator who creates guidelines for states to adopt voluntarily. New tonight, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has removed all members of the scientific committee that advises the CDC on how to use vaccines. He has promised placing his own picks to fill the 17-person board. Secretary Kennedy said the current panel had too many conflicts of interest to remain on staff. Developing now, visas for Harvard are being processed again. The U.S. State Department instructed all diplomatic posts to resume the request for foreign student and exchange visas. Last week, President Trump ordered the end of the program for Harvard, but his order was blocked by a federal judge. That injunction is temporary and could be lifted depending on the outcome of lawsuits in court. The Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking trial is now in week 5 of testimony. Today, the ex-girlfriend testifying as Jane said a year ago Combs physically assaulted her before insisting she cover the bruises with makeup, take ecstasy, and participate in a sexual performance. The trial is expected to last several more weeks. Combs has pleaded not guilty to sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy charges. Coming up next, a fast start for Pacific hurricane season. The storms that could become hurricanes as early as tonight. We are tracking it. Then, American and Chinese officials are negotiating again. Why it's taken so long for the two superpowers to get trade talks back on track. Then, the convincing tactics jury scammers are using to get people to pay them thousands of dollars. We'll be right back. The Pacific hurricane season is off to a fast start with Hurricane Barbara forming earlier today. Now, the storm is not a threat to land, but just southwest of it, Tropical Storm Cosme. Right now, the third named storm of the year, it is expected to turn north towards Baja California in the distance there. And that could also reach hurricane strength later tonight or tomorrow morning. As well, the National Hurricane Center is following another storm south of Mexico. We got the map pulled up for you right here. This tropical disturbance has at least a 60% chance of developing into the fourth named storm of the year, less than 1 month into hurricane season. President Trump's travel ban for national security purposes is now in effect. Citizens from 12 countries, including Afghanistan, Haiti, and Sudan, are banned from coming to the U.S. as of today. There are also 7 countries, including Cuba and Sierra Leone, under heightened travel restrictions. There is no end date to the ban, but there are some exceptions, like for dual citizens. American and Chinese trade representatives are trying to get negotiations back on track in London this week. Each side has temporarily lowered what were triple-digit tariffs on each other. But as the National News Desk Atra El-Nashar reports, they're still far apart on some sensitive issues.
President Trump's economic team emerging from almost 7 hours of talks with their Chinese counterparts Monday, meeting on neutral ground in London, seeming to play out longer than the Trump administration had hoped.
I expect it to be a short meeting with a big, strong handshake, and we'll see. But that's what we're expecting.
No handshake yet. A second day of talks is set for Tuesday. This is the second round of talks between the delegations, meeting after a phone call between President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping to address an unraveling agreement.
We had a very good talk, and we've straightened out any complexity. It's very complex stuff.
Last month, the two sides met in Geneva, where they each agreed to lower what were triple-digit tariffs and a range of non-tariff barriers. For China, that included access to their rare earth minerals.
And they were kind of releasing them, but it was going a lot slower than some companies believed was optimal.
China controls about 90% of the world's supply of these minerals and magnets, vital to tech and defense supply chains.
And if they're slow rolling, setting those to the U.S. because of some licensing deal that they set up, then it could potentially disrupt production for, some U.S. companies that rely on those things.
China, meanwhile, accused the U.S. of violating the Geneva Agreement, pointing to its export controls on semiconductors and a new State Department policy to aggressively revoke visas for Chinese students.
The White House says they've really had to put all their time and energy into the China issue, but they say once it's back on track, India is at the top of their list of trading partners they hope to strike a deal with before the president's tariff pause expires 1 month from now. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
4 Japanese soldiers are injured after an explosion at a U.S. military base in that country, according to officials. It happened at an unexploded artillery storage facility. The U.S. Air Force said no American service members were involved. The accident is thought to be the first since 1974. Authorities are still investigating the cause. President Trump spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for about a 40-minute call this morning. Israeli sources say their talks were about the ongoing negotiations with Iran and their nuclear program, and that their military cabinet held a meeting after that call. President Trump has so far urged Israel to show restraint in attacking Iran nuclear facilities while negotiations continue. But Iran's foreign minister today called the U.S.'s offer unacceptable as Iran prepares a counteroffer. Also, another body held hostage by Hamas and their supporting terrorist factions has been retrieved by the IDF. It happened this weekend. On Saturday, Israeli forces found and brought back to Israel Thai citizen Natapong Pinta. Israeli officials say he was kidnapped on October 7th and then killed in captivity. 55 hostages still remain. As few as 20 are believed to be alive. A new study shows moms are stressed out. Medical reporter Liz Bonas shares the story of one mom who is speaking up so others will know help is available.
Hey there, everybody, this is Katie Harper and her daughter Charlotte, and Katie is sharing a story today with us so others know it is sometimes okay not to be okay.
A lot of women don't know everything that I know about what to look for.
Little Charlotte is now 2 and quite the bundle of energy.
Oh, there's a big drop-off.
But Katie says a short time after Charlotte was born,
it hit me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't eat. I cried all the time.
Luckily, Katie also works for the National Alliance for Mental Illness, or NAMI as we know it, and knew she was in danger.
It felt like the walls were closing in on me. All I wanted to do was hold her. I didn't want anyone near her. And it was a few weeks of just like this intense, scary darkness and anxiety.
Because Katie's feelings hit early, she reached out to her women's health provider and got counseling and support right away. But this new study published in JAMA Internal Medicine shows many women are struggling from early on in parenthood and not getting that help. After surveying nearly 190,000 mothers over 8 years, researchers found only about 25% could say that their mental health was excellent. It was about 40% at the start of the study.
It's common, but it's not normal, right? So I think a lot of women hear, oh, well, this is just what it is. So, I have a baby and I'm going to feel this way. Well, you don't have to feel this way. There's help.
Katie says reach out for that help by calling 988, which can direct you to resources in your area. And NAMI, she says, can also do that online.
The $400 million defamation lawsuit brought by actor-director Justin Baldoni against Blake Lively and the New York Times has been dismissed by the presiding judge. Baldoni countersued Lively after she accused him of sexual harassment and misconduct on the set of their movie It Ends With Us. The judge ruled the claims made Lively, as well as the New York Times that reported on the accusations, are protected speech under litigation privilege and fair report privilege of the press. Coming up, the motivation that led an 18-year-old from Alabama to run for mayor of his hometown. We'll be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Virginia, where highly convincing jury scams are spreading.
Can you tell me again what department you're with?
Yes, sir. I'm actually with the Franklin County Sheriff's Office.
A man on the phone telling Adam he missed a federal jury summons and was in danger of going to jail.
$25,000 per citation. You do have a failure to appear and also a contempt of court.
He was using buzzwords. He was using official judges' names.
Prince William County Sheriff Glendale Hill tells me others have recently experienced the exact same script.
I think one person told me they sent them $8,000.
I was listening to him and I was actually believing him because he hadn't asked me for any money yet. And then the shoe dropped.
A sheriff's deputy will never ask you for money over the phone.
It looked like a bomb went off inside. It was just,
total mess.
Shattered glass everywhere and wooden borders replacing windows. Component Coffee and Tower Yoga faced another vandalism. Greg Amend, co-owner of Component Coffee in Fresno Tower District, says he got a call after 3 a.m. from the alarm company and the police, letting him know the shop had been vandalized.
All the windows are shattered. Our things inside have glass in them, so we're having to, clean everything up, throw things away, replace stuff.
Despite the damage, Amen and his team have no plans to shut down. They're focused on cleaning up, making repairs, and continuing business, knowing the community wants them to stay.
Fairfield is my home, and I'm running for mayor because I love this city, and I believe in its future.
Fairfield elections are August 26th, and the position of mayor is highly sought after now that current mayor Eddie Penny is not seeking re-election. Moss says he's inspired to help the community he grew up in.
We, as the next generation, have to be able to move with the time. We have to mature to do what we need to do to be the leaders of the future.
While most people Moss's age are putting on swimsuits to enjoy their summer break, Moss is putting on his suit and tie for a bigger purpose.
All right, looking ahead to the future. Coming up next, an unusual helicopter rescue. Why a zebra who was on the loose in Tennessee was returned and how it returned home. We'll have that story right after the break. You may remember this viral story. Check out this incredible video of a runaway zebra actually being transported by a helicopter. This pet zebra was captured yesterday after over a week on the run, even causing a Tennessee highway to be closed at one point. Authorities found the zebra in a field south of Nashville, airlifted it to a trailer and returned it to its owners. It is indeed legal to have a zebra as a pet in Tennessee. Just glad it's back home. That's going to do it for this edition of the National News Desk. We invite you to join us again tonight as we continue to track the protest in LA.